Hey, I'm the Hard Times guy. Just before Christmas, I did a video. I ran into some technical difficulties with part of it, and because of that, I didn't get it published. Struggling with uh, getting that part of it the way I wanted it. So I had the video made, waiting on that, and I mentioned the video first to my sister, and then because of the conversation I had with her, I spoke to my brother about it. And then after I spoke with him, my wife volunteered some more dialogue on what we'd been talking about. She sat and listened to the phone conversations that I had with my siblings, and then she interjected her thinking based on her experiences or an experience that she had had dealing with this subject matter. And so I began to realize that I needed to either not publish this video at all, or I needed to follow it up with another video providing more clarification. So now for several weeks I've contemplated that, and I decided that I'm not going to make another video, but I'm going to make this little piece of video that precedes within the video that I made before Christmas. The video is about times in my father's life when, the simplest way to say it, I guess, is that he lost his temper, but he lost more than his temper. He lost control, and he lost, I think, even his memory of what happened in some instances. And the video I made before Christmas spoke of one of those incidents. In fact, it spoke of more than that. It spoke of me hearing of those incidents as a child, and a phrase that my father used, the phrase being, "I flew mad," and the number of years that it spanned in my lifetime before I had an understanding of what that phrase meant. And my initial understanding of it came when I was 12 years old, and the incident described in the video, and I gained more insight to it over the years until I was probably in my early 60s, and I thought I had a good handle on it. Now I'm 73, and because of what I've described to you so far today, I realized that I didn't have a handle on it until now. So in just a few minutes, you're going to see the video that I made before Christmas, and I want to introduce it with this. This video was made mostly from the perspective of a 12-year-old, and through his eyes, his father was a hero. I have come to realize now as a 73-year-old that these incidents weren't even close to heroism. In fact, my father considered them to be undesirable. He realized that he lost control, and he realized that this is something that, not that he should be better at, this is something that shouldn't happen. And he conveyed as much to others. So I'm not going to make a follow-up video, but I hope that this introduction to this video helps you to understand why I made this pre-introduction to the video. I'll tell you a story again today. It's a true story. Took place at little place called Moore's Landing. It's on the East Fork of the White River, just a little bit northwest of Palestine, Indiana. The names of the people in this story have been changed to protect the innocent. Not really changed, but altered a little bit, or I'm going to give you incomplete names. Most, maybe all these people in this story except me are passed on now. When I was a boy, my dad had a saying. It usually occurred when he was telling the story. And he would be going along with his story, and some things that transpired that caused him to have a mood change. And when he was telling one of these stories, and it came to that point in the story where he had this mood change, he would say, "I flew mad." I flew, F-L-E-W, mad, M-A-D. That's what he'd say. And I heard him say that many times when I was a boy. And you got from the gist of it what he was talking about, but you never really fully understood the phrase, "I flew mad." I always wondered, what does that mean? I flew mad. Because once my dad said, "I flew mad," that was usually the end of the story. You might know something about, a little bit more about what happened, like who went to the hospital, or how Dad's false teeth came home in his shirt pocket in two pieces with an extra tooth laying there. You might see little details or hints of what had happened like that, but there were never any details given during the course of H.W. Moon's recollection of the story after he said, "I flew mad." So I always wondered what that meant. When I was about 12 years old, and I'm guessing I might have been a little bit younger than 12, I was sitting in a Swiss 6 outboard motorboat tied to a tree slightly east of a place called Moore's Landing. There was a concrete boat ramp that come down into the White River there, and within a few feet of that boat ramp, my dad had his Swiss 6 boat, and I don't remember which one it was. It was either the salmon colored one, which was the first one, the 14.5 footer, or it might have been the blue and white one, which was a little bigger. I think it was maybe 15.5, 16 foot long. It was one of those two Swiss 6 boats that my dad had, and he and I were on the river that day. And we'd been running up down the river with some of his friends. So our boat was tied to a tree limb there by the boat landing. And tied onto our boat was a red Aristocraft 17-footer. And tied onto it on the inside, next to the bank and behind our boat, was a teal blue or teal green Aristocraft 17-footer. And you might see this three combination of boats on the East Fork of White River between, say, the Bedford Boat and Sportsman's Club and Williams Dam. You might see those three boats together on the river lots of times in the time period I'm talking about, because the red Aristocrat boat belonged to a friend of H.W. Moon's, and his name was Tom. He had a pretty little red-haired girl wife named Marge. And Tom was a used car salesman, just like H.W. Moon was. But Tom he had a partner. His name was Leroy. And Leroy and Tom sold new Aristocraft boats. And so Tom had a new Aristocraft boat, bright red. There was another man in town, and his name was Ray. And Ray ran a filling station. And Ray, he liked a boat too, and he was also a good friend of my dad's, H.W. Moon. And Ray owned the teal blue Aristocraft boat. He bought it from Leroy and Tom. And this particular day, Leroy wasn't there, but Tom and Margie were there. Their red boat was tied to my dad's boat. And Ray was there. And sometimes Ray had his family members with him too on the river, but this day he had another man who I'm going to call John. Part of the time I'm going to call him John, and part of the time I'm going to refer to him as Mion. And I just bring that up because Mion was the name that H.W. Moon and his partner in business, his name was Jack, they called this man whose name was actually John, they called him Mion. And they did that just to aggravate him, because his wife was in business for herself too. John also was a used car dealer. He had his own place of business down on Washington Avenue. His wife had her own place of business, and it was a beauty shop called Mion, M-I, maybe an apostrophe, O-W-N. So my dad and his partner Jack, they like to call John Mion just because it aggravated him. So these are the characters, or most of the characters in this story. We were sitting there, we'd been running down. I think that day we'd been almost to Williams Dam. Maybe we'd went down to within sight of Williams Dam that day. And turned around and come back. Before we loaded up the boats and started back home, we'd stopped there and tied up next to the bank, and they were just talking and visiting with one another, and probably they had some refreshment in a cooler. I don't remember what that might have consisted of. I'm pretty sure that Tom and Marge were drinking out of long neck brown bottles. The rest of them probably were mixing Coke with something out of a clear bottle. But I'm not certain of that. Pretty certain about the long neck brown bottles, but in fact I'm pretty certain it was Pabst Blue Ribbon. But the rest of it I'm not too sure about. But I'm sure there was something like that going on, because that's what they did when they went to the river. I was too young for something like that, so if I was getting to do anything, it was every once in a while I might get to drink one of them small bottles of, what were them bottles, 6 or 8 ounce Coke bottles. I might get one of them out of the cooler and get to drink it. So that's what we were doing, sitting there talking. Tom was sitting in the front seat of his boat. Marge was sitting on the same side of the boat as him where she could talk to people, but she was sitting partly on the seat and partly on some floatable cushions that she had her feet propped up on. She had on a bathing suit. And Ray and John, they were in the boat back here, and they were all just sitting there visiting, just about ready to wind up the day. And down the river comes, I think this boat was a Glastron, but I'm not sure. But it was one of those outboard motor boats that a little bit wider than a normal one, had kind of a double V hull, had one of those windshields that come across like this on both sides of the front of the boat there, and then in the middle the windshield was like a swinging gate that actually would swing and make a door, and you could go through the windshield and walk out into the front of the boat, which was partially partially up at the top level, but partially down at the floor level too, and you could walk out in there. Well, them kind of boats. And there was 3 young men in it, and by young men, I'm going to say these guys were early 20s to maybe as old as 30, but I don't think so. I think all of them were probably in their early to middle 20s. I would have looked at the people in my party and called them young people too nowadays, but they were probably middle 30s to early 40s. I'm going to say would have caught most of them. Probably not even early 40s. I'm going to say middle 30s to late 30s would have caught most of them. But out there on the water, there's one guy behind the boat on water skis, 2 guys in the boat. And they're going up and down the river there, and they went down there past us, and just on the other side of where an old railroad trestle used to cross, and there's the stone that was supported the railroad trestle was still in the water there, and they go down past that, and they turn around and they come back by us and go back by us towards the boat club, out of sight barely, and then here they come back again. And they was whooping and hollering and having a good time, and they did that a couple, 3 times. Somebody yelled at them, said, "Hey, going down the river to do that a little bit. You're joshing us around over here, banging our boats together, knocking us up against the bank. Going down the river." Of course, they couldn't hear what you were saying, but they could tell that somebody was yelling at them and waving. So they went on down the river a little bit. Directly here they come back, and now they wasn't pulling the skier, they're just the 3 of them in the boat. And they went up past us, and they turned around, and they came back by us again. And they didn't even get down to the railroad trestle this time. They turned around and came back by us again, and they did that a couple times. Just purely to aggravate somebody. That's what they were doing. They heard us yelling at them, and so they got the skier in the boat, and the 3 of them was running back and forth just to make our boats jostle around and bang against each other. And so somebody, and I think it was Ray, but it might have been a combination of him and HW. They stood up and they yelled at the guys out there in the boat again and said, "Hey," and they had a few more choice words for him this time. It might have included words like moron or something like that. That's moron's more one of my words. Their words would have been a little bit more vulgar than moron. But they yell at him again, "Go off somewhere else and leave us alone." Something to that effect. And these old boys come in then and pretty close to us, and they idled down there by us, out about 15 feet away. And they began to exchange words. It got pretty brash and angry and vulgar. They went past and they come back up, this time close. I mean close enough that they were right next to us. And HW said, "Hey, you guys to watch your mouth. We got a woman in the boat. You guys going off somewhere else and mind your own business." Something to that effect. And they started running their mouth again and made some reference to Marge and made some reference to the rest of them, and wasn't any of it pretty. And I could see a change coming over HW. And Ray and John reached out and got hold of the boat. And they pulled it in next to ours. They didn't know what was about to happen. If they had, they probably wouldn't have done something like that. Because when they got that boat in next to ours, H.W. stood up in the seat of his boat, stepped over on the front of that boat that them three boys was in, stepped down in the middle part of it, and about that time, the guy that was driving the boat, first one in the front seat there, he come up with one little, it's longer than that, it's probably about that long, one of them paddles, probably 42 inches, maybe 4 feet, but I doubt it long. One of them little lightweight paddles that you kept in a boat like that in case your motor quit or something and you needed to just maneuver a little bit. Couldn't really take a boat that big very far with a paddle like that, but you could get around a little bit with a paddle like that, and most people had a paddle like that in their boat. I think we had one in our boat. He come up with that paddle, and when H.W. stepped over into his boat, he took that paddle in his right hand and he swung it around there, tried to hit him with it, and H.W. throwed his arm up like that. The paddle hit him in the forearm, and he grabbed it and twisted it right out of the guy's hand, and he put it over in the other guy's hand, and I looked at the guy and I could tell that his whole mood about the situation had changed. He had terror on his face, and when I looked at H.W., it was something dark and spooky that he was looking at. And H.W. took that paddle and he hit him right upside the head with it. I mean, whack! It cracked like a rifle, and over the side he went into the water. Meanwhile, the other two guys, the one that's in the back of the boat, here they come. One of them a little faster than the other one. The one that got there first, he got the paddle coming back the other way, but this time the paddle, I think it had broke already, maybe not, but something caused H.W. to lose his grip on it, and he hit him a little bit with it, but not very much, just enough to slow him down, and then he stepped back between that split windshield, and he hit that guy right in the mouth with his fist, and that guy staggered backwards, and he come forward and hit him again, same hand, same place, and that guy went over the side. And I looked up, and the third guy, he was scrambling up on top of the motor going east, and he jumped out in the river to get away from the whole melee. And I turned and looked at H.W. again, and his face, which was intense, and his eyes were kind of glazed over, and suddenly everything just kind of relaxed, and it's like you went like that, and he came to himself, and he just stepped back over into our boat, and he said, "Turn that boat loose," to them other two guys, and they said, "It'll drift on down the river." He said, "That's all right, them guys can catch it. That one of them's down there against the bank now." So they shoved that boat out, and it went on down the river. And sure enough, the guy down there, he caught it, and them other guys giving us a wide berth. That river's not very deep right there. I don't think they ever was at a place, although the first guy got halfway across the river before he stopped. I don't think they ever got to a place where their feet wasn't on the bottom. They were kind of jumping up and down with the water up, maybe to their chest. And I don't even remember them getting the motor started and leaving, but I'm sure they did. What ends my recollection of this at the time was I looked down in the water next to our boat. Actually, it was between our boat and Tom's boat, where I could still see it. And there was that paddle, and it was kind of going back and forth between our boat and Tom's boat. It was laying there in the water, and it wasn't in two pieces, but it almost looked like two pieces. It had split right down the middle lengthwise. But it was still held together by just a few little splinters. And I tried to reach over and get it, but it got down between the boats where I couldn't reach it. And next time I saw it, it was coming out the back, and it too went down the river. I told you that story to say this. The next day, or maybe it's 2 days later, I'm not sure. But I think this happened on a Sunday, and I think the next day I was in the car lot on a Monday. And my dad was telling Jack, his partner, about this story, what happened. And he told it just about like I did, right up to the point where he stepped over in their boat. And what he said then was, you guessed it, I flew mad. And I waited for him to describe the action that I saw, about how he hit the first guy with the paddle and tried to hit the second guy with the paddle but lost the paddle and hit him with his fist. I waited for him to describe that. He didn't say another thing. He said, I flew mad. And that was the end of it. So I learned something right there. I learned what I flew mad looked like, because I knew the rest of the story. I sat right there in the boat and watched it. So I knew that I flew mad meant there was H.W. Moon was about to get violent. And there was going to be lots of action. And somebody's apt to get hurt. But he never said another word about what happened, telling Jack. He just said the one guy that was next to the bank caught their boat, got it going, and fished the other two of them out of the river, and they left. People that know me know that Lonesome Dove is my favorite all-time movie. Just this week, I think New Year's or Christmas Eve, Betty and I was sitting home and it was on the TV, so I watched 3/4 of it again. And in Lonesome Dove, the all-time best Western miniseries, and probably the all-time best Western movie, or the all-time best movie of any kind, Lonesome Dove, starring Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones. There is as perfect an example of I flew mad as you could come up with. So I've got DVRs, DVDs, or whatever they are, the disc things. I think I got one with the whole miniseries on one disc, and I've got another, which is a 4-disc set. So I could have done this a long time ago, but I never did. But while this movie was going on, I just hit the record button, and when this scene come up, I recorded it. And at the risk of getting in whatever kind of trouble you get when you put somebody else's stuff on YouTube, I'm going to put that in this video just to show you what I'm talking about and to illustrate something to you about I Flew Mad. And in this scene, Woodrow F. Call is in a little town called Ogallala, Nebraska. and he steps out of a store and he sees something developing down the street from him that arises an ire in him. And when he sees this, what's developing down the street, Woodruff Call flew mad. He got on this little gray mare that he's so fond of, and he went charging down the street on that mare, and he run right smack into the side of this cavalry scout up on a big brown horse, knocked him over, and continued to wreak havoc with this cavalry scout that he was upset with. To a point where Gus, Augusta McCrae, his partner, another old Texas Ranger that's the star of this movie, he has to intervene and get Woodrow away from this man before he kills him. And when he does this, then Woodrow, I'm going to say, comes to his senses, or I think I said in the video when I made it, he woke up is what I said, I think. But what I want you to see from this little film clip is something that I began to understand was a part of what had happened when H.W. Moon said, "I flew mad."
This is Dixon, our scout. We're looking for fresh horses. Ours are putting their wore out, chasing Red Cloud. That's a nice looking animal you got right there.
Well, thank you. I like him myself.
I'll take him and any others you got.
He's not for sale.
I ain't asking. I'm telling you. I'm requisitioning that horse for the government.
I'm telling you, he's not for sale.
You defy the U.S. Army. That's treason. You cowboys can be hung for treason. Now, how much for that gelding?
He's not for sale.
You damn cowboys are too fond of your horses.
Are you going to dismount, or do I have to drag you off that pile of soap bones to settle with you?
Huh. Now ain't you a tomcat?
That'll teach you to sass me, cowboy.
Go on, get his horse.
No, sir, this horse ain't for sale. This just told you that.
You cowboys are pests. Even your pops. Now give me that horse.
No, sir.
I said give me that horse.
No, sir.
Damn you.
No, sir.
Damn. Give me that horse.
No, sir.
Give it to me.
This ain't for sale.
Give me that horse. Let him go. Give me that horse.
Hey, quit that.
Give it to me. I said give it to me. Give me that horse. Damn you. Give me that horse.
He's killing him, Gus. Then you go back to your wagon, son. Stay back here. Stay back here.
Woodrow! Me! Woodrow, it's me! It's me, Augusta! Damn it, Woodrow! Look at me now! Woodrow! sir. He just quirted me a little bit. And you wouldn't let him take Dish's horse?
I think there was a time where maybe not a total blackout or a total loss of memory, but just a time when something overcame him, that his response was fast and furious, and he didn't even know what he had done or what he was doing. So when he told a story like that, it always ended with, "I flew mad." And that was it. You never got any of the details, because I don't think he could recall the details. I'm not sure I even realized this until I saw that scene in Lonesome Dove where Woodrow flew mad. And in that scene, you can see the start of it and you can see the end of it. And I saw that same end of it in H.W. Moon in the little story that I told you. I saw that you can see Woodrow coming back to awareness of what's happening and who's here and what's going on. You can see it in his face. I saw that same thing happen to my dad in this boating incident story that I told you today. I don't know what this got to do with the Hard Times guy. Don't know what's got to do with going to auctions or buying antiques or selling antiques or recreating antiques or repurposing something into something useful that it didn't used to be. Any of that stuff that you usually see from the Hard Times guy, but I've been wanting to tell that story for a while. And was reminded of it night before last. And I just decided to put this little video together, tell you that story. I should have given you a heads up warning like I did in that last video about the rant I was going on about basketball. Should have given you a heads up and give you opportunity to turn it off and go on to something else, because it's, but I didn't. And subscribe to my videos if you haven't already. Like this one if you can. Doesn't really help me out, just makes me feel good somebody liked my video. Till the next time, have a good day. I'm a Hard Times guy.